Archbishop Vigano returns to speak, and this time he spares no one. He comments on the latest note dedicated to the Virgin, but he does so in a tone that is disturbing, shocking, and forces us to face what many pretend not to see. Brace yourself. What you are about to hear will leave no one indifferent. When the doctrinal note, with the Latin title Mater Populi Fidelis, was presented in the Vatican palaces, many immediately sensed something out of place. Latin, the sacred language of the Church, was used as a mask to introduce a document that in essence appears to be yet another sign of doctrinal confusion. Behind the facade of liturgical language, in fact, lies a text that many theologians and faithful perceive as a wound inflicted on the very heart of the Catholic tradition. It's not just a question of words or titles, but of spirit. What once vibrated with faith today seems reduced to a soulless formula, a ritual shell emptied of grace. In Rome, there is talk of renewal, but the impression is spreading through the corridors of the Vatican that behind this note there is a precise ideological plan, carefully designed to erode what remains of Marian theology. Mater Populi Fidelis, Mother of the Faithful People, should evoke devotion, but it ends up sounding like an ambiguous, almost sociological title, shifting attention from the mystery of faith to collective sentimentality. It's a language that reassures the establishment, but unsettles the believer. Many observers note an unusual haste, an urgency to publish, as if one wanted to imprint a new seal on the body of the Church before anyone could react. One senses the echo of an institution that no longer speaks with an apostolic voice, but with the anodyne tone of a press office. Yet beneath that icy surface, tension simmers. The question is no longer what the note intends to say, but what it seeks to destroy. For Monsignor Carlo Maria Vigano, the note represents a sign of spiritual ruin, the most recent symptom of a disease that has been corroding the Church from within for decades. He defines it without hesitation as a scandal, an act that confirms the hierarchy's desire to impose doctrinal and moral deviations on the faithful, disguised as pastoral progress. Harsh words, leaving no room for benevolent interpretations. According to the Archbishop, these are no longer isolated errors, but a deliberate strategy aimed at dismantling the Catholic faith and replacing it with a religion of man. Vigano describes the speed with which this document was drafted and released as a sign of impatience, almost a destructive fever that no longer cares about internal contradictions. A haste that betrays the fury to destroy, he writes, identifying in this haste the symbol of a church no longer afraid to appear divided, schizophrenic, affected by a pathological bipolarism. On the one hand, he rejects the title of co-redemptrix attributed to the Virgin Mary. On the other, he celebrates John Henry Newman, who had strenuously defended that title. It is in this unresolved tension that Vigano sees evidence of the doctrinal disorder that has now become a system, the sign of an authority that has lost its coherence and even its identity. Archbishop Vigano's denunciation isn't limited to theological matters. The Archbishop surgically dismantles the behavior of those he believes orchestrated this doctrinal note. His direct target is Victor Manuel Tucho Fernandez, prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, whom he describes as a soulless bureaucrat devoid of pastoral zeal and driven by interests that have nothing to do with the salvation of souls. According to Vigano, Fernandez is not acting to clarify doctrine or defend the truth, but to consolidate an ecclesiastical power now detached from the faith. Behind the cautious language and conciliatory tone of the document, he sees a logic of demolition. The intent, he argues, is not to defend the purity of the faith, but to accustom Catholics to the idea that doctrine can change, that what was true for Pius XII can today be denied without scandal. The Archbishop openly accuses Fernandez of not believing in the unique mediation of Christ, much less in the co-redemptive role of Mary. Recall how the prefect himself, along with Bergoglio and Prevost, argued that all religions lead to God, a statement that for Vigano represents the dissolution of Christianity into the most radical relativism. His words don't seek conciliation, but judgment. Fernandez, he writes, cares nothing about the co-redemption, a sentence that, in its simplicity, carries the weight of an indictment. From this perspective, Mater Populi Fidelis becomes for Vigano a piece of a larger plan, a document designed to accustom the faithful to a faith without dogma, to a religion where every truth is negotiable. He invites Catholics not to be fooled by the pastoral tone and to recognize the subtle nature of a language that only serves to mask the lie. This is how the adversary, he warns, conducts the battle on the terrain that is favorable to him. The Archbishop does not speak as an academic theologian, but as a witness to a battle he perceives as spiritual, convinced that behind this doctrinal confusion is the hand of Satan. Vigano then extends his criticism to the general climate that reigns in the so-called synodal church, describing it as an organism now devoured by contradictions and structural falsehoods. In his view, confusion is not an accident, but a real strategy designed to weaken faith and accustom believers to the idea that contradiction is compatible with truth. It is in this acceptance of the absurd, he states, that modern apostasy is consummated. The faithful are induced to renounce their own reason, their sensus fidei, that spiritual intuition that for centuries has safeguarded tradition, even when times seemed dark. Thus, under the guise of inclusion and mercy, the surrender of doctrine before the spirit of the world is prepared. At this point, Archbishop Vigano's criticism becomes almost an indictment. He recalls one of the most controversial episodes of his recent pontificate, the veneration of Pachamama in the Vatican gardens during the Synod for the Amazon. He recalls how on that occasion an attempt was made to present a pagan idol as an image of the Virgin Mary, and how the scandalized reaction of the faithful was ignored or mocked. For Vigano, that episode was not a simple liturgical incident, but an unmistakable sign of the new spirit animating the hierarchy, a syncretism that profanes the sacred and replaces devotion with the cult of man and nature. No one was concerned about doctrinal misunderstandings then, he observes bitterly, when an attempt was made to pass off a pagan simulacrum as the Mother of God. And he accuses Fernandez and Bergoglio of having learned nothing from that wound, continuing instead to promote confusion as a method. And do you agree with Monsignor Vigano's words? Or do you think his interpretation is too harsh towards today's church? If you feel the need to rediscover the peace beauty and depth of authentic faith, let Gregorian chant accompany you. Visit Fides et Traditio. You'll find voices, prayers, and sounds that bring the heart back to the silence of God. Find the link in the description. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.